sorry, efficient. Ooh, nearly. I'm struggling with the wind. God, I don't know what those are called. Whiskey bits. We'll call them whiskey bits. What do you call it? Not extend. The opposite of extend. What's the opposite of extend? It'll reduce the life of the... Ooh, I'm getting taken over in trays. The cake, whoopsie, cake or bun or... Ooh, the wind's catching me today. Hello, welcome to my channel today. Today we're outside because it's such a gorgeous day, and what we're going to look at today is not baking. No, we're going to be looking at the things that you need to actually set off baking. The bare minimum requirements that mean you can knock a cake together or a bit of pastry together in no time. If you're making cakes, the one thing that you need to do is have the correct quantities. It's a science, baking, so the correct quantities really matter. What you need to do that with is the perfect measuring device. Okay, and in this instance, in baking, we use digital scales. Now, this set of digital scales I've had for years. It's a digital set which will go back to 0, and then you can add more ingredients in. You can use whatever you want on it, so you can use your mixing bowl on it, or you can use the ingredients themselves and wipe it down afterwards. It's up to you how you do it, but a good set of digital scales that'll do pounds and ounces is exactly what you need. So that goes. Okay, so the next thing after a set of scales is measuring spoons. In England, we have these sort of spoons, which are tablespoons, teaspoons, half a teaspoon and quarter teaspoon, which if you're making something that needs a precise amount of measurement, then you definitely need some measuring spoons for those precise measurements. Also, if you're making, if you decide to make cookies and so forth, a lot of the recipes are from America. They're ideal because Americans like their 1 cups, their half a cup, their 2/3 of a cup and their quarter cup. So if you are following cookie ingredients, baking or anything from American recipes, you need your cups there as well as your spoon. When I first got some cups, they were metal cups, and it was, oh good lord, 20 years ago nearly. These days though, with the internet and everything, everything's available. And these were available, I think, in Dunelm. I use these here. These are Pyrex dishes. There's 3 of them in total. 1, 2, 3, and they're lovely. The stack, which is what's good, saves on space. And I use the big one to make my cakes in. If you want those are relatively cheap these days. I can't remember how much I paid for them because they're that old, but I think I've seen them online on Amazon for £12. What you really need is a spoon. Now, if you're going to be doing things by hand, which if you're just starting off, I would recommend you do things by hand, is a wooden spoon. You need a wooden spoon. Now, these are 10 a penny these days, but the thing about them is they are naturally antibacterial. They are easy to grip. They have a nice sort of thick wooden handle, which is size, and the weight of them makes it easy to wield, especially when you're rubbing butter and sugar together for a cake mix. The wooden spoon is ideal. It doesn't leave any flavours behind, especially if you don't use it in your sauces. If you just keep it for baking with, then you'll have that for a very long time. The only time to get rid of them is when they start splitting down the middle anywhere. Another thing you'll need is a whisk. Best one to buy is, I was looking online, and the best one to buy is a stainless steel whisk because it doesn't rust. It's easy to deal with. It's got a nice thick handle for the air to get into the actual item that you're whisking, which makes it easier to whisk. So yes, I recommend a set of whisk. The next thing I would get, especially if you're making cookies or what have you, cookies and scones particularly, is a set of cookie cutters. Now there's usually about, how many does it say in here, 5-piece cookie cutter set. This is stainless steel because I like it to go in my dishwasher. They fit all together, the 5 of them fit all together, and it's easy to find in my cupboard, which, let's be fair, it's never easy to find anything in a utensil drawer. So yeah. So the last item I would recommend is a spatula. This is a silicone spatula. I recommend a silicone spatula because they are great at getting everything off the side of your bowl, like metal won't, or plastic even. These are really good at getting it off the side of your bowl. And in this day and age, with prices being what they are, I would certainly want everything that's in my bowl to go into my cake. So I recommend a good spatula. Now we're going to be looking at what sort of baking items you actually need in the form of tins and trays. I think personally there's 4 essential items that you do need, and the first one would be baking sheets. I recommend 2 because your cookies, when you make a recipe with cookies in or biscuits, 1 tray is never enough, so I would get 2 trays. And if you make sure the non-stick don't actually come off them. I use parchment paper because I don't like mess basically. But yes, a couple of trays is essential. The next thing I think you need is a couple of cake tins. If you're going to be making like Victoria sandwich or any other form of sandwich cake, then these are required. You can also use them for tray bakes if you don't have trays there. I've used them to making cinnamon rolls in them and all kinds. These ones particularly are non-stick ones and are loose bottomed, so that it's easier to release your cake from. You can grease them well on the inside, which will help your cake to release from the tin, but my recommendation would be just to put a bit of parchment paper in the bottom. A couple of cake tins is essential, and the last thing that I think is essential is a 12-hole muffin tray. Why muffin tray and not cupcake tray? Well, cupcake trays are smaller for starters and they don't hold as much. And you can use muffin trays for all kinds of things. You can use it for cupcakes, you just don't fill them as high. You can use them for muffins because it will be bigger. You can use it for individual portions. Bins and all kinds can go in these. I've baked egg in the hole in these, I've poached my eggs in these. Please don't just be limited to the fact that it says muffin tin. But my advice would be to get a good heavy duty non-stick muffin tin. As with the cake tins, you can grease them before you put anything in and not use liners and just go as is, which people do to save on expense. I personally use liners, but if pennies are tight, all you need to do is grease the inside with some butter or oil, and put a bit of flour in sometimes works, or if it's chocolate, a bit of cocoa, and just tip it around and then tip it out. So those are my essential items for tins. Now we're going to be looking at the ingredients that you need to make any basic recipe. And I've assembled what I consider to be the main ingredients to make most items in the baking world. You'll need plain flour. It was used a lot until the 1920s, until self-raising flour took over. There was a baker in the Newcastle area called the Royal Bell Bakery who decided that he would make self-raising flour more popular. It was usually used by bakers, and the common person only ever used plain flour. So he decided he would make a lot of ingredients from the self-raising flour and sell them for a small amount of money at a baking convention, and everybody loved his recipes. They all wanted his cookery book and then started using the old self-raising flour. Plain flour is used for things such as pastry, biscuits. It has a more crumbly texture than the self-raising variety. Always have some plain flour in. It's a good thickener as well. If you're putting it in sauces and stuff like that with a bit of butter, it will thicken your sauces up as well. So have a bit of plain flour on hand. Self-raising flour is good for cakes and so forth. If you want that light consistency, I would use self-raising flour. They've also brought out these days cake flour, but in my opinion, you don't really need it. Self-raising flour does the job, and these come in at around £1.60 each at the moment for a kilo, So you also need over here baking powder and bicarbonate of soda. The reason why I say get these two in is because often they're added to either of these two to make a lighter textured cake or biscuit or whatever you're making. So they're always handy to have in. And bicarbonate of soda is also a very good cleaner. Then to make your goods sweet, what you need is some sugar. And the one I would recommend to have in the most would be caster sugar, because it's finer and it'll make more things. You can add it to plain flour for biscuits and you won't notice, you'll know it's sweetened, but you won't notice the texture as much as if you put granulated sugar in. And then your fats, you've got your butters, which make things more creamy, have a depth of flavour to them. You've got your spreads, which is block form or in tub form. Now I really like Stork. It makes amazing cakes in my opinion. I find baking a cake with butter tends to make it heavier, so I would recommend having Stork in the house if you're in this country, for the simple reason, if you're going to be baking cakes, you want a nice light cake. And I've read somewhere as well that Mary Berry and Paul Hollywood both like our Stork, so if it's good for Mary, it's good for me. They also make it in block form. My understanding is as well, if I just check the back of here, so these are vegan. There you go. No animal products in these two items, all vegetable products. I always have lard in the house. My father and mother used to cook with it when they were younger. I don't do that, I've got to be honest. But I do use it for pastry. It gives a shorter texture. If you want to cut down on the amount of money you're spending, then Stork of any form is a lot cheaper. Buttermilk. Now it doesn't have to be buttermilk. It can be yogurt or milk. I just got the buttermilk out to show you, because when that reacts with baking powder and bicarbonate of soda, you get an absolutely gorgeous fluffy texture. So I recommend having either natural yogurt, buttermilk or milk in the house. There you go, there you have my selection of what you need to start off in baking. So you've got all your baking stuff together, you've got your basic ingredients, you've got your utensils and you've got your tins. So how do you learn to bake? Well, I started as most other people have done at my age group. I'm 54 and we start with good old B-roll recipe books. And I learned from this one here. It's the original one from the 1950s, I think it is, 1940s, 1950s. Most of all my recipes, whoopsie, come in this book. It's a well-known recipe book. There's about 41 editions of it so far online. But if you want to start baking and you want basic ingredients, small amounts of ingredients, like no more than about 6 things in each recipe, then start with your B-roll book. And this one here is from the 1980s. This is, as you can see, very well used, this one. This one's off my mother-in-law and this one was off my mum. And it's extremely well used because the recipes are reliable and they are good. So my advice is start with your B-roll recipes. Now I know you can get them online at the moment. Courses are available online, some are free, some aren't. I know the BBC does one for about £22. So my advice, as I say, is to start with your B-roll recipes. So that's me for this week. I hope you enjoyed what I'm doing. If you did, give me a thumbs up, subscribe and share to your friends. Liz out.